Hello everybody, welcome and thanks for joining me to talk a little bit about the benefits of database consolidation, how it's key for enterprise acceleration. It's not only about the cost, it's even more about the agility and speed. I'll talk about 4 different areas in my presentation. I introduce you to infinite computing, something you might not be familiar with. Why does it matter? Why are outcomes so important? Why do enterprises have to accelerate? How do you achieve that with database consolidation? And then conclude with some recommendations. And the big question to ask is, where will your enterprise be 25 years from now in 2025, right? The problem is that we tend to overestimate what technology can do in 1 year, and we underestimate what technology can do for your enterprise in 5 years. And that leads to a continuously disappointment in technology because people always think there's a hype, but then underestimate what's really happening. So you need to take your time of your busy schedules, maybe use some downtime introduced by the pandemic and think, where will your enterprise be 5 years from now? It's not necessary to take a trip to the Easter Islands, but think about this long term and hopefully I give you some pointers with this. And in Constellation Research, we have a general framework of things you have to think about. There's one area which you can look at, this is macro trends, but you cannot influence them, you can react to them. That was, for instance, who is the Democratic VP candidate, like we learned the other day, or who's going to win the US election, or how is the EU going to bail out Corona states. You can't influence it, you have to live with it. The second one is very important, and you're close to it working in IT, and it's changes in the workforce. There's multiple generations in the workforce. It's hard to find the right talent. It's hard to retain the talent, but there's also an opportunity to find the right talent as workforce fluctuation is introduced by the current pandemic. And then, of course, there's disruptive technology adoption, which we'll talk about a lot. And then really the key thing, the fourth part to look at is there's new digital business models which are being created. And those enterprises who can run these business models well and operate them well can be disruptors in their industries. And to help you a little bit with this, there's 3 mega trends on this. And those 3 mega trends are globalization. It will continue to be the leading economical power force, which is fueling the world economy since World War II. The second one is digitization, which we'll talk about a lot, so not much time to spend there. And the third one is a dramatic change in the age structure of the world population. The developed countries in the first world are operating right now on 6 people working for 1 person retired. 15 years from now, this will be 2 people working for 1 person retired. So dramatically different levels of automation will be needed by enterprises. Best practice which have been established with a more human-centric focused part cannot do the same routine task anymore. So automation is going to be essential for enterprises, not only to survive, but also to thrive. So we're coming to enterprise acceleration as the next topic, or infinite computing actually as the next topic. The question is, what is infinite, right? Wouldn't we all like to be at a nice beach this summer? Many of us couldn't travel, the few of us who were lucky, but think about for a moment, you're going to a beach and you want to build the biggest sand castle ever, right? You bring shovels and all the tools for that, you have great plans, and the question is, will you ever be worried that you will not find enough sand at the beach? Probably not, right? So that's the concept of something which is infinite. If you can't measure it, and if you can't limit it from any perspective, it is infinite, and we experience it right now. Right, we're having a meeting powered by Zoom. You're connected from all over the world for us. You see me live here in San Diego, something we couldn't do 20 years ago. Or 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago. We take infinite connectivity as granted. The next level is infinite insights, right? This is the first time that enterprise can store every electronic information that is available for them without knowing what kind of questions they want to ask, right? That is a technology powered largely, if you're not familiar, by something called Hadoop, started in the advertising space, tremendous capabilities for enterprises to, for the first time, get all the answers, not only from their structured relational data, their systems of record, but also from their systems of engagement, all the other systems which are the social, the machine learning, all the digital exhaust, and the digital artifacts are coming together. On the 4th level, we bring all this together with cheap infinite compute. And cheap infinite compute is largely powered by the cloud, because a cloud vendor who has made investments into cloud infrastructure and sees low utilization will provide you more of that cheap compute. And compute is so important because it helps you to make sense out of the data which you saw in the infinite insights. You can only store the data, but to query it and find out what might be happening, you need infinite and cheap compute. And on top of that comes one of the most exciting things which are happening right now, which is machine learning. Right? You saw some examples for that, how it benefits the Oracle Autonomous Database, but for the first time, you have the capability to really see how people are working and then put into algorithms what is happening, how we can automate that, how we can help them. And this is going to be the key to solve the age dynamic which we are facing, and at the same time, the key to help enterprise to move faster. And if you're not familiar with the technology which has won that area, look at TensorFlow as a tangible example. And on the fifth level, the very last level, we're talking about deep learning, which is still a very new concept, but this means that the machine learning pieces are basically running, borrowing a word from Oracle, autonomously, right? System software is learning by itself what humans are doing, what should be happening in the future. And it's key for the automation. All the other four levels are relevant to make deep learning the fifth level happening. So here are the 5 layers again: connectivity, you know, infinite insights you should be using, infinite compute you're probably using. I don't know if you use spot compute capabilities. Machine learning you definitely should be looking at, and infinite deep learning is around the corner. So stepping back for a second to understand that, right? You think about business best practices in the world are typically advancing 2-3%. If an enterprise can grow revenue profitability by 2-3% year over year, it's been a very good year, especially when you're in mature established markets. If you think about what technology can do to support that from a business perspective, it has always been lagging the business best practices. Technology has traditionally been, until like 2-3 years ago, always something which was a compromise. You couldn't store all the data. You couldn't query all the data. The UX was a compromise. It wasn't intuitive, right? The battery life wouldn't last. And some were pointing it for all technology 3-4 years ago. For the first time, technology could do more what business best practices demands. And that is what creates the opportunity. So if you look at the left side of the slide, the legacy phase, where you as a trusted technologist in your enterprise would be sizing hardware to what is needed, was very, very powerful, but is no longer what's the case, because now it's about best practices catching up to what the technology can do. So let's make an example, right? I like sports. Everybody has a pair of sneakers. The problem of sneakers is they grow old. You might not be using them, or you might be using them, running them. So with infinite computing, you can have the next generation sneaker business, the other SaaS business, as I jokingly say, right? You can connect your sneaker through an RFID on an NFC chip with infinite computing, with infinite communications to your data center. You can collect all the data. You can bring in the weather data. You can bring in the app of the user. How much have they been running? Where have they been going? What is the trail capacity? You can overlay, neutralize trail data or other running data from other people with the same sneaker to see the longevity. Then you can bring it to the AI part, which says, you need to support your sneaker better. You need to run your sneaker better. You need a new sneaker. The second sneaker is coming up, or you're planning to run somewhere. So great example how infinite computing changes something like the sneaker industry in a SaaS model. Let's move on why it all really matters. Let's talk quickly about enterprise acceleration. So what is really important, and here's a famous picture from a lighthouse in front of France, La Gimont, in front of the Ushant Island. You want to be in a situation where you're comfortable, no matter what's happening in your market, no matter what kind of wave crashes into you, you can be as confident as the lighthouse keeper in this French lighthouse, because the speed that your enterprise can move is faster than what your markets require from you. There's 9 drivers for enterprise acceleration. Let me quickly run through them before we go in detail. Business user empowerment, you need to leverage big data, you need to use machine learning, you need to build modern software, which is next generation applications on a modern platform, which is next generation computing. You need to enable your business user with known low-code capabilities. You need to live in multiple clouds. You have to find a better solution to integration, and you need an overall AI or machine learning strategy. Let's dive into them for a moment. What's really, really critical for an enterprise to move faster and be more efficient is that you enable and think about who are the first and second level leaders in your enterprise. The first line managers, second line managers and directors who really need to move the bulk of your employees into a new direction in challenging working parts. And you need to focus your IT investment on what is really relevant for the business user to be successful. Simple question, is it relevant to log into multiple different databases or applications to run something in a customer-facing business? Probably not. So refocus on business user empowerment. Big data, we mentioned this, like for the first time, your enterprise can store everything that is electronically available. Not only what is your digital artifacts from your relation database system, but also all the digital exhaust which is there. Time data, IoT data, machine data, log data, bring that together for insights. It's tremendous for you to understand what is really going on in the enterprise. We'll talk at the recommendations about a concept called the Sentient Enterprise. Big data is the fundamental breakthrough and enabler for that. You need to look at machine learning, where you can make sense of things. It's time to let humans not spend time on routine and repetitive tasks, which don't make the user and employee experience better, but only make it more cumbersome. You need to think about modern applications. The traditional applications cannot take advantage of capabilities like we mentioned on the big data machine learning side. You probably might have to build these on the modern technology stack, because remember the chart with the technology best practices. The new best practices for the 21st century on this infinite computing capabilities have not been established yet. So software as a service vendors, as standards vendors can't build them. So you have to have a very strong platform as a service, build and do it yourself part. Often I say, the cloud is the second generation of the mainframe, and those of us who are old enough from hearsay know that when you bought your first mainframe, you had to build your own applications. And it also means you need a new compute platform, right? And we talk about one in this, this presentation here with Oracle Exadata and the many deployment options which you have, where you can take the same workload from running in the cloud to running on premises, managed by yourself, or managed by Oracle. And this kind of like workload portability is what enterprises need, not to be locked into a certain location, not to be locked into a certain vendor, not to be locked in a certain best practice. So look for next generation computing platforms. And you need to know the software is driving the world. You need to enable your business users to use no-code, low-code capabilities, because there's just areas which your traditional developers will never get to. So empowering your business users to change their application and automation faith and history is going to be crucial. And last in this recommendation that's coming to the end, you must master multi-cloud. Multi-cloud is a reality for enterprises. You're running in multiple clouds by your standard software, SaaS vendors decisions. You're running multiple clouds because you're changing strategies. You must have something to master multi-cloud. And you need to find, because you're in multiple clouds, a different way on how to integrate it. We call it fluid integration. It can no longer be this traditional declarative process, but with the power of machine learning, with the power of infinite compute, systems in 2020 should figure out, oh, a zip code is the same thing like a postal code. Why don't I connect these systems? So think about a modern and much, much better way of integration powered by infinite computing. And then last but not least, really, let's call it machine learning, call it artificial intelligence, or Oracle calls it adaptive intelligence, doesn't matter. You have to find ways how to take the know-how, the best practices out of what your people are doing and automate it for them. The technology can do this, and you can revolutionize your best practices and your automation levels, reaching what we're talking about here, a faster way to do business, enterprise acceleration. So keep in mind, the speed of your enterprise must exceed the speed of your markets, so you don't get overwhelmed or overtaken by your competitors. But that also means, as you being the technologist here, that the platform you decide to run on must exceed the maximum speed demands of your enterprise. So you can go as fast as possible and are not constrained by the platform capabilities. And that's so important, because if you use the new platform capabilities, they're infinite. The traditional constraint of sizing a finite computing part is something of the past, no longer there. So let's move to what's really interesting here. What are the drivers to database consolidation? And there's again 9 of them. Let me quickly run through them. Cost savings, we heard about this before, which materialize largely in something which is cost near and dear to your heart and cost. Data center savings, there's a concept which I introduced called data gravity. There's higher resilience, which you achieve from that. There's very big hyper-converged benefits. It's a next generation compute platform, at least when you look at this from an Oracle perspective. You need to be ready for moving to the cloud. You need to be ready for leveraging AI, and you need to practice what you heard already before, enterprise acceleration, which database consolidation allows you to do. So let's jump into them. So cost savings are super important for enterprises right now, right? Given the pandemic, you're in a situation where you do not know how your business is going to operate. in a few months, in a few years from now. Right? Many enterprises who are sidelined need to find a way how to pivot, how to do new things. And guess what? That new operation which they have to set up, the new reinvention they need, needs capital. So cost savings, which now save money, save capital for becoming and enabling that pivot, are even more relevant for enterprises than traditionally, right? Who would say cost savings have not been important, right? Which CFO gets bored and say, don't talk to me about cost saving. That's not the case anyway. Database consolidation, and it's very common knowledge, right? Doing less things, doing more things with bigger things than lots less of little things is a very difficult thing. So there's intuitively cost savings from moving to modern hardware architecture, bringing things together, consolidating things, no question. And they materialize very largely in data center savings, right? And data centers right now are even an area which is kind of like potentially going extinct for some enterprises because data centers might not be around. They, again, CapEx the company has spent onto. And really the lesson learned from the pandemic is you need to tie your IT footprint to what is happening in your business. You do more business, you need more IT. You do less business, you do less IT, right? All the mainframes which are standing at the airline companies, right, which were a fraction of their IT costs, are now a substantial 20–30% of their IT costs and not being utilized and taking a lot of space in their data centers, right? So look for data center savings here. Look at potentially reducing even the size of your data center. And then there's a concept we should spend some time on, which is data gravity, right? It's interesting that data attracts data. That's something which we have not seen so much in the past because IT was running and business was running in separate silos, and somebody had to integrate these things, often at a very high expense. Look at your call center where people have multiple screens to type in different applications and integrations happening through the 10 fingers. That's not the way how you want to operate in the 21st century. But in order to enable your business users to be effective on this, you have to bring data together in the same place. And it starts when you look at your systems of record or with all your data to bring it together and consolidate on a single system, because it will give you better access and then will give you better insight connecting those data together. Because ultimately, your data footprint is an image of your business activity. And if you want to improve your business activity for outcomes, having more data together is highly beneficial. Last but not least, data is usually important by getting it in and out of the cloud. Egress costs are very, very expensive, so be very careful where you want the data gravity to sit. The other benefit, of course, is higher resilience. When you consolidate on newer systems, you have a better system from a stability perspective, from a modernization perspective, and from the added services, right? You will have better security. You'll have the chance that your vendor is monitoring the application for you. So you achieve a higher level of resilience, which really matters in the enterprise, given the amounts of recent data breaches and security hacks and hacking attacks that we see right now. And then there's hyper-converged benefits, right? Which of course at Oracle mean Exadata. And if you think about for a moment, does it make sense that the vendor who's building the software which I want to run, in this example, the Oracle Autonomous Database, builds the hardware where it runs on? Would they know in the best way what are the requirements for that hardware? Will they tune memory, storage, networking, CPU capacity to the best performance output of that software? It's almost an unfair advantage to be able to build your own hyper-converged hardware knowing and having the software. So it's a kind of no-brainer that you need to leverage the hyper-converged benefits on a database consolidation part to be competitive in the market, to do what the other companies are doing. And then the next generation compute. A next generation compute is a platform which does not lock you into deployment forms where data resides, where data is sitting, right? You want to be able to have workload portability. You can only achieve that with a concept we call identicality. If things are the same between the left and right, if you can run the same code assets, the same structure, the same data that you're running in the cloud, you can run it on premises as well. And Oracle with Exadata gives you exactly that next generation compute platform. And with that, it gives you also cloud readiness, meaning that running on premises, for whatever reason, it might be data residency, it might be performance, it might be the way of working. You might have a board which is very conservative and wants you to have your data center, fine, but you're ready to move to cloud and you have the knowledge about the high identicality that you can run exactly the same workloads that you've been running locally in the public cloud and Oracle's generation 2 public cloud. And last but not least, right, hopefully you take this away, AI, artificial intelligence, or call it machine learning, is really the game changer here, right? The more you can automate your enterprise, the automation imperative, the better you do as an enterprise, the more you can automate. When people might be sick, have to care for loved ones, are not showing up, are not available, are not being hired, the better automated enterprise, the better machine learning, the AI-enabled enterprise is clearly in a better shape to be a winner in turbulent economic times. Which leads to, if you do all this, to a faster, more agile, more accelerated enterprise, which you don't have to run at super speeds, but you can run at the speeds that you need to be a winner in your markets. Let's come to recommendations. Yeah, and go back to where will your business be in 5 years from now? So hopefully you learn some things on the more longer term things, which you tend to underestimate. Think what you'll be doing 5 years from now. And take as a background a famous quote from Mark Andreessen: software is eating the world. Software is the platform which companies operate on. And software is what you have to master and enable for your enterprise. So what are some of the success patterns of successful enterprises here? First of all, you have to prepare for deep learning. That's the thing after the hill, after the AI hill. You do this by consolidating data, by having cheap compute availability, understanding infinite computing. You need to become, which I mentioned before, a listening enterprise, right? The listening enterprise is the one which can generate different strategies and validate those strategies. How do you validate those strategies? For intelligent dynamic service, you find out what will customers buy, what will employees like, what can partners and suppliers do, but this has to be automatically done. You listen across your whole enterprise and listening mesh, which is powered through big data. So listen more or think more about how you enable the sentient enterprise, which is always on top of what is happening inside of your enterprise. And then database consolidation, right? It's one of the most basic steps. Obviously, that's why you're here, to bring the data together, to have a 2 + 2 = 5 benefits, to be on a modern platform, to be able to move back and forward with the cloud, move workloads for that, and get better and greater insights from a more universal database, which has more code, more data come together. And keep in mind, right, last not least, again, the lighthouse in France, you must be moving faster than your markets. If you cannot do that, you're at risk of being disrupted. So speed, not just raw speed, but measured speed, speed which helps you achieve your goal, is of the essence in your enterprise. Hope you liked that part of this presentation. Here's how you can reach me. Feel free to reach out and contact me. Happy to help you answer those questions for your enterprise.